Hi there. I'm Frankie Firefighter. Do you want to be my friend? Maybe subscribe to Matthew Davis's YouTube channel? That would make me very happy. Would you maybe like the video? Turn on notifications? I know we've been having a lot of drama because of Copa, but let's just enjoy the video and think about a happy, fun time at the movies. Enjoy. Hey guys, what is up? This is Matthew Davis Media once again. Welcome back to another movie review, aka After I Saw, and this time it is going to be on A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood. Now, this is the true story of Mr. Rogers, but it mostly focuses on this guy named Lloyd, who has been having so much trouble with his life, with his family, his newborn son. He's been doing really hard to keep his family together with his wife, and he gets into a fight with his father, and now he has to do an interview with Mr. Rogers, and when he talks to him, Mr. Rogers starts talking about, like, how he feels and stuff about certain stuff in on, why his father hurt him and stuff like that. And from there, we don't just have a movie about Mr. Rogers, but a movie that focuses on, happiness and kindness and how we should all be kind to one another. Even though, really dramatic stuff has been happening all the time, like over the internet and stuff like that. This movie takes place, around like the 80s or the 90s. Well, of course, when, the Mr. Rogers TV series was made. And, from there, we got a movie based on a true story that I have a feeling a lot of people are going to see. Now, I was really looking forward to this movie. First off, let me just start by saying I love this documentary, Won't You Be My Neighbor? This is the documentary of Mr. Rogers himself. This was my favorite movie of 2018. Even though it was a documentary, I still felt like it was an actual film. This movie had me tearing up. I just loved every single second of it. It's one of my favorite documentaries of all time, and if you haven't seen it, if you missed it out in the theater, I highly recommend you check this movie out. And when I heard they were making a movie with Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers, I was even more excited. And I am really happy to say this movie was fantastic. I had a great time with this movie. First off, Tom Hanks as Mr. Rogers. Think about it. Tom Hanks, the man himself, playing Mr. Rogers. That is like the most genius idea for casting I have ever heard of. And he is top notch. He nails it in this movie. So much so that recently he discovered he might be related to Mr. Rogers. And I can honestly see why, because he felt like Mr. Rogers. Not just because of his hairstyle, not just because of the way he looks, but the way he seems. He is flawless in this movie. As for other stuff going on in this movie, the movie really goes for its really strong message. I mean, this man, the main protagonist played by Matthew Rhys, he has just been struggling so hard. There are elements of this movie, like the movie's rated PG, so it's a lot more appropriate than Won't You Be My Neighbor, the documentary, which is really surprising because there are moments where I got a little bit nervous of what was going to happen. Like, there are times when I was worried, like, the main protagonist that isn't Mr. Rogers is going to flip out, and that kind of had me, leaning against my seat. Now, the way the movie is shot, the way the movie, progresses, like, there are certain transitions, like, with the dioramas and the stuff, that they use in Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, like the moving cars and stuff. They use a lot of that throughout the movie, and that was just so creative, and I love the way that they did that. And, of course, the score to the movie, the score feels as if it was part of the music for Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. Like, they use that throughout. Like, there was just so much love in this movie dedicated to, what happened. Like, this isn't technically about the life of Mr. Rogers. This is basically, about how one man just basically just loses it. And when he has to do an interview with Mr. Rogers, it takes a little time for him to progress, like, situations happening. And there are other stuff that happens in the movie that start getting pretty dark, actually. Not too dark, because, like I said, this is a PG movie that, had me, like, it just didn't have me bored. Like, I was really interested seeing what was, like, this is inspired by a true story, by the way, and the way, how he becomes friends with Mr. Rogers is just, this movie just has so much heart to it. Like, it really is a movie that I feel like we don't get much of nowadays, and it just shows, like, how much, the world has just been falling apart recently, and with a movie about kindness, like, just showing be kind to one another. It's a very strong message, and it's the type of message that is easy to give out, but just showing this movie, like, Mr. Rogers, it just shows how much of a kind man he was. It's just hard for him to get mad. Like, that's something like most people can't really do. It's just really impressive, and I believe it. I truly believe it. And all in all, the way that this movie just told the story, it was just fascinating to me. In terms of gripes that I have with the movie, like, there's like this dream sequence that kind of doesn't make it feel like it's inspired by a true story. I mean, I get what they were going for, but it seemed like it was just a little bit silly for me. And all in all, I think that's my only gripe with the movie. The rest of the movie I thought was absolutely fascinating. Like, it's not very long. It's just an hour and 47 minutes, but I feel like that's just enough runtime for this movie. It doesn't have as much Mr. Rogers as I was hoping for it to have, but that's okay because, these other characters, they've been struggling a lot, particularly the main character, Lloyd, and everything else about the movie, it was just fascinating. All in all, this movie was exactly what I was hoping for. It has a strong message. The performances are super top notch. It gives a lot of love, not just to the Mr. Rogers series, but of course the man himself. And the fact that when he's with these other people, they just become kind back. It's just really fascinating. And all in all, I definitely think this movie is absolutely worth the price of admission. I'm going to give A Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood a 4.5 out of 5. Another thing I should mention before I end this video, this movie really spoke to me. Like, I could kind of relate to this movie. And that's really surprising, actually. All in all, I'm glad we got this movie. I will say, I think I like the documentary just a bit more than this, but that doesn't change the fact that I love this movie. Now, I was going to see 21 Bridges the same day as this, but I did not get the chance to. I'm probably going to see that tomorrow. So, yeah, look out for that. But thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys later. Ward out.